All right, guys, then here we go. Today's webinar is about an idea that we've been discussing for a while, is how to convert ideas into projects. I put my name down, but actually Pete did a lot of the work giving the idea. We had discussions about this, so it's really a two-man work. Well, one and a half. He did a lot of the work. And I'm here to show you the process that we eventually got down to. The thing is, what we wanted is to get something that is as straightforward and with as little bureaucracy as possible, but it's still to avoid any useless, to use the time in a very efficient manner, but still it's going to consume a little bit of time. The thing is, the general overview we're going to show you is that how to take the idea into a pre-proposal, and then a proposal, and finally a project. And the way I'm going to show you is a 5-step process, from always following this straight line from idea into project. Now, the first step is how do you go from an idea to a pre-proposal. So let's say somebody comes up with an idea. This is the proposer guy. The proposer has an idea. So what he does is he goes into windempowerment.org and download or fill up online. We'll discuss this in the end. But he goes there, he downloads this sheet, which has, it's a very brief, this is exactly the sheet that I'm talking about. It's a copy from Excel spreadsheet, which basically has the title of the proposal, the name of the person's email, the date, and the work group owner, something we'll discuss later. And the person gets this, and basically the person needs to fill up these two spots about the background and the objective of the pre-proposal. So the idea of the background is that the person comes in and describes what's the background of the situation of, that actually led to this project proposal. So the background is important. The person tells where he or she is, what they have been working with, why it has not been working, or what problem they have been facing, what kind of situation are they into. That gives us as much information as possible, so for us to know if that's actually in accordance with what wind empowerment is and what wind empowerment does. And once this why is set out, the person now actually writes down the objective, like what is the general objective of this project? In which way will this project achieve something which is useful for the wind empowerment community? So the person writes all this background down, and they say, well, based on looking at all this, considering we have been having these and these and these problems, we are thinking we want to create we need a new sort of wind turbine, or we want a new application for water pumping, or we need a new tower, something like that. It's an objective. It's kind of broad, but the description, the person that's proposing should just gives us enough information that we know what they want, we know why they want what they want, and we kind of have an idea on what the project is. Once the person has given us this information, the person sends this pre-proposal to us, to wind empowerment. And this pre-proposal gets to be, this is the next step, the step 2. The pre-proposal goes to what we call a proposal collector. This person basically looks at the pre-proposal, checks out that the pre-proposal, the 2 blocks are written with enough detail that actually justifies somebody else's time. So you have all the context. You know where the member is, what the member has been doing, why the member needs what they need, and what's the objective. And then we see that the objective has something to do with wind empowerment. It's not, let's develop a new solar panel or something like that, but it has something to do with wind empowerment. And this proposal collector, at this moment, the proposal collector sees if there is enough information. Proposal collector sends the proposal to the corresponding working group coordinator based on what the working group coordinator of the different working groups. If the proposal is about the market assessment in a certain country goes into market assessment group. If the proposal is about a new type of course for building wind turbines, it goes into the education working group. Once, and this is the beginning of the step 3. These pre-proposals go, if it's refused, goes back to the proposer. The proposal collector says, well, I'm sorry, there's not enough data, there's not enough information in your proposal. Please give us more information. But if there is, goes to coordinator, and the coordinator takes a look at the pre-proposal and kind of compares with what's going on in the working group. You know, if somebody proposes something that's already going on, then what the working group coordinator will do is send back an answer to the proposal saying, hey, we actually have something like this going on. Please join us. You can work at this project or that project that's going on. If there's nothing like that and the idea is quite good, the working group coordinator now gets this pre-proposal and it's going to boost it up into a proposal, which means the working group coordinator sees what the proposer is sending, looks at the proposal, looks at it, sees it's useful, it's interesting for the working group for wind empowerment. Work group coordinator then makes what we call a proposal meeting, where the working group coordinator calls the proposer and maybe 1 or 2 specialists, people that he knows that work with that area, say if it's somebody proposing towers and looks interesting, call Pete, have a small Skype meeting discussion about it, and beef up the information that was given before through what's in this next slide, the end of the description. So once we know why we're doing it and in which way it's interesting, which was the 2 blocks that we've filled up before, then we have a description of the deliverable, which basically describes the product outcome of the project. What will be delivered in which format? Is it a new sort of manual for building towers? Is it a market assessment report? Is it a new type of, is a new organization of an education, of a workshop? So that needs to be, that's described in detail during this meeting between the working group coordinator, the proposer, and the specialists. The approach, the method that should be used in the project. How are we going to achieve these targets? Are we going to write this stuff down? We need people to write, gathering data, or we need people to actually building towers and testing in the field, or do we need people to get something else somewhere else? What's the method? And once we know the method, by continuity, we will naturally go to the point where, okay, so we have this, this is the deliverables, this is our method. So now we can start looking up what the human and the material resources that we need to get this done. And once we get to this point, we can we start to, the proposal, it's starting to become more solid. We have what it looks like a project proposal. And comes the last, this is the 4th step, is the most important one. Because after this one, the working group coordinator either files this proposal within the working group or goes on with it. So this is which goes into step number 5. If the working group coordinator realizes there's a lot of interest inside of this proposal, in order to make a proposal become a project, we need to combine proposal, people, volunteers, and funds. So the idea, the people, and the money or the resources. So the working group coordinator would need to have to discuss with somebody what we call the proposal seller. But basically, it's people, you know, like Jay, that know a lot of people and can talk to people and say, hey, we got something going on. Would you like to help us with there's an interesting project that might call up to you. I don't know, something like that. Or me goes up to students and say, hey, we got a new project going on with a guy in Nepal. Well, are you? So we gather volunteers, and at the same time we have the fundraiser going around looking for funds based on the proposal that we have built up, because we have enough we've described it in enough detail so we kind of like know now how much would that require, or at least we have a general idea of what are the funds, what are the resources which are needed. Once we get this stuff, the working group coordinator, the proposal, the volunteers, and maybe another specialist, depending if we need one, we get together. That's the final step. That's the step when the proposal becomes a project. And we discuss about it. We go into more detail into what needs to be done, what kind of planning are needed. And actually this moment is where we build a project, as in a project leader and a project team, which means the project leader may be a working group coordinator, might be somebody else completely. It may be the proposer, it might actually be someone else. The idea is that the projects, they don't need necessarily to run under the tutelage of working group coordinators. The role in this scenario, in this idea, this approach, the role of the working group coordinators could end here. The working group coordinators could have the projects that interest them, and they help people set up new project teams, and these teams, they're going to work on a project, and when the project is done, the team is disbanded. So this is quite long and looks very complicated. So I'm going to give you 3 examples. So trying to show you how this is not necessarily that complicated. Example number 1. Say an irrigation system. Somebody comes up to wind department, writes a pre-proposal, say, hey, I'm in India, I've been working with poor communities with little electricity, and I would like to set up a new mechanically powered irrigation system. Sends that to us. A proposal collector looks it up and say, well, it's mechanically powered. There's not enough information. The guy's from India, you're working with communities, but where are you in India? What kind of communities are there? What kind of needs are there? Can you give us a little bit more information? So mechanical power is not our thing. Maybe we are more into electrical thing. There is, go back to him and say, sorry, it's not. Let's work this out better. This is the first example. So it doesn't go through the proposal collector. Second example is maintenance manual. Somebody writes to wind department and say, hey, I've been working with bigger turbines for a few years. I have some extensive field experience in Argentina, and I've been collecting a lot of data, and I think it might be a great idea to set up a maintenance manual for wind department. Sends that to proposal collector. Proposal collector looks it up and says, well, it looks interesting, has data, we know where he is, the guy has identified himself, and and the idea looks reasonable within what wind department does. So send that to the work group coordinator, to Gail, and Gail looks it up and say, well, we already have people working on the maintenance manual. So he goes back to the proposer and say, hey, I've received your email. Thank you very much for your idea, but we're already working on it. Would you like to join us? Would you like to help the people who are working on this project? And Gail just forwards him, puts him inside of the group, the project team that's working within that project. And the last example goes from beginning to the end. Proposer writes up, hey, I would like to create a wind turbine test rig. I've been working, I've been working with wind turbines. I'd like to be able to test them before deploying them in the field, or to find a way. But the guy gives you the whole pre-proposal description, where he is, what he's been doing, why is this interesting. Goes to the proposal collector, looks it up and say, well, this looks well written. There's enough information here, so send this to the working group coordinator. Working group coordinator looks it up and say, well, we don't have anything like that for now. We're working on other stuff. So calls a proposal meeting, writes a proposal, say, hey, that's great idea. Would you like us to meet and talk more about it? And then get, Costas and me and somebody else, Costas, me, Jay, and the proposer, we all meet and start talking about it over Skype, and then we start filling up the pre-proposal and beef it up, give more consistency to it, and then it becomes a proposal within the technology working group, and that proposal goes to. I start talking to Jessica. I talk to everybody say this is interesting, a good idea. Maybe we should fund this. We should like to try to find some volunteers. Maybe we could try to fund this through some external funding that might be interesting. So by gathering that, we do a project meeting, and in the project meeting we call at the same time the proposer. Jay is interested. He joins the meeting. I'm in as the working group coordinator, and there are other people as well who are the volunteers. And then we set everybody together. We discuss about it, and we end up saying, okay, this is the guy the project leader who's gonna coordinate this project, and these people are gonna work with him, and they're all gonna focus on building this wind turbine test rig, and that's it. Project starts. And right, so in terms of needs, and this is something that Pete was very adamant about, and I think that's quite it's actually quite important, is that this kind of method can only works if we have proposal collectors. So people who are willing to look up what kind of proposals are showing up and redirect them to the correct working groups. Pete suggested that in order to ease when we call up the specialists to do the project meeting, that we have a who is who network in order to ease up the moment, like how to find the specialists who are needed for a certain proposal. So we need people who are willing to participate in expanding proposals. Maybe either some participants or some members that are interested in spending some time, a week or a month, depending on the number of the proposals that we have, to kind of give some time away and make the proposal a little bit better. We do need people to go find the human resources. People, I can do that at the university level. Pete also can do that. So, but other people as well, people who can go out and find volunteers, and obviously fundraisers to find the material resources based on whatever the project is happening and how's that happening. And I think, and then what happens afterwards? There are several scenarios. Maybe what will happen is in a lot of the cases we're gonna go all the way to the project phase, but not all the way to the proposal phase, but we don't have enough resources to start projects. But since we don't have enough resources to start projects, but then we just file up our proposals. But whenever we can, if there is a moment when another call for projects shows up, we can get those proposals back, shuffle them up a little bit, and propose and try to find the money. That allows us to have sort of a portfolio of different ideas that we have developed to a certain extent, but we just haven't found the resources to go through with it. We could do joint projects that we realize that a lot of people are proposing similar projects, so we can kind of like put them together with different groups and kind of look for funding for that pack of projects at once. Or we could do this kind of process up to the proposal phase could be a way could help us finding out what kind of projects are interesting for, say, a call for projects that we are trying to attribute some of the money which is within wind empowerment to certain projects of people. So having this in mind, I want to show you what I've been looking. I've been trying to, let's say, there you go. I've done, because another drawback of this method is that it looks very bureaucratic. Download the file, send it somewhere, then get it back, and then send it somewhere else. And so what I did is I created this form. It's online. I've embedded it in Wind Empowerment website. You can see it's private for now, but it's a form which recaptures the general idea that I was giving to you guys before. And in this this is the pre-proposal form. Somebody comes in, writes down like the project title, the proposer's name, the proposer's email. I write just anything to have an idea. The background of the proposal, so you describe the background that leads to this proposal, and the objective of your proposal. Put a date. Let's say it's this date. and what kind of proposal it is. We ask people to only, if they're pre-proposal, to click there, and then they submit. Then what happens? We have, this is linked to a, web sheet in Google Docs, where you find the project like the one that I've just filled up here. This project, this is up to pre-project phase. It's up to here, up to where you can see. So what the project, the proposal, what the people who would receive the proposal receivers would do is that they will look this up and be sure that this is properly filled in. The good thing about this method, this thing is, well, the rest would be empty. And what I did is that, maybe it didn't work this time. No, it didn't. Hold on, sorry. Didn't work this time. Well, I put a link to the answers here, which basically means if the guy has written down, he has done the proposal, a working group coordinator looked it up, found it's interesting, calls the guy again, let's do a meeting. When we go to the meeting, people have the link, and the link would allow them to go back to the already pre-filled proposal. So we have the pre-proposal here, we can discuss about it, and we just switch into proposal mode. And now we can continue filling up the pre-proposal, looking like choosing which working group are you into, describing the deliverables, the approach of the project, describing the human resources and the material resources, and finally submitting it again. And what happens here is that finally what we have is a spreadsheet which we would have all our projects already automatically filled in based on, well, what kind of human resources are needed, the material resources needed. Would have this general description of all our projects within one single spreadsheet. Maybe it's not the best way to do it. Maybe a spreadsheet is not necessarily the best, the more interesting form of gathering information, but it's a way of concentrating the information so everybody in the board can see, all the working group coordinators can see it, or they can be in this spreadsheet and then can find out based on the working group. Is it here? Based on which working group are you in? To select the project based on the working group, or whatever it is, whatever you want to do. So that's basically that's it. That's my presentation. That's the idea that we're trying to show you guys. As a recap, we go from idea into project, going through 5 steps, where the 4th step is let's say the critical step, where we actually go from pre-proposal to proposal. And then the 5th step would be a sort of a supplementary step where we've already have a proposal and we finally find the people and the money to get the idea on the road. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Luis. Shall we open it up for questions?
Sure, definitely.
Hey Lewis,
Aaron.
really good presentation. It's Aaron here. I really enjoyed your presentation. My main question would be the pre-proposal guy who gets the pre-proposals. Could he not be a working group coordinator?
He could.
An extra step for a guy to review the pre-proposal, and then it goes to a working group coordinator. Could that guy not just be the working group coordinator? Because I don't imagine the pre-proposals would take that much time, and it might be more effort to try and train someone up as a pre-proposal reviewer than just to get the working group coordinator to do it anyway. Because I mean, he's going to be developing the main proposal anyway, and maybe it might make more sense if the proposal just comes straight to he or she, the working group coordinator.
Maybe the proposal collector could be the working group coordinator's coordinator.
Yeah, I think that would make most sense actually, because they would then be the first point of contact for someone who has an idea, but they don't really know which of our working groups it fits into. Then the working group, the coordinators of the working groups, as in Esteban and Costas, I think it would make a lot of sense for them to do this pre-filtering of making pre-proposals up to the standard that we need in order to become proper proposals, and assigning them to the working group to which they're most closely related.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
And I think that also gives sense to the working groups. But also it's always important to keep in mind that the working groups, they can kind of disappear or fuse or melt or change according to what we're doing. But the working group, the technical and the socioeconomic coordinators, they're there. They're going to be there anyways. So and if they can see the proposals passing by, they see the proposals coming, they see them rolling. They're kind of like have an overview of what kind of proposals are passing, what kind of proposals that we are rejecting.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd get a much better idea of what problems are out there in the field, and therefore how our working groups should be shaped in order to address those problems.
And they can report straight to the board if there's a moment when we need to fund a certain project or another one. The choice might come to the board, and these are the people who are best in the best position to actually inform the board about the project.
Absolutely. And if wind empowerment is not working in the way that it should do to support these ideas and translating of ideas into projects and ultimately solutions, then they can be the ones that can suggest ways in which wind empowerment can restructure itself to be more effective in creating the pathways to getting solutions for our members, which is after all why we exist in the first place.
Yep.
So that leads quite nicely into my question that I had. So I also really enjoyed the presentation. I thought it was very concise and very focused. So thank you for taking the time to prepare that and order it into a way that quickly and concisely got the information across to us. So my question was about, we are also on the side developing this call for proposals for wind empowerment fundraising, which I know you've commented on yourself. So I think it's a document that Aaron prepared in the first place, and Jessica and yourself and me have helped refine. So I'm wondering, we've got these two bureaucratic systems that we've invented which seem to be doing the same thing. Can we not simplify it so that there's one system that then enables the fundraising people to find out what we need money for, the working group coordinators to find out what we need projects for, and the people who have ideas for what needs to be done to match up with those two other people, rather than having two separate systems for people to learn?
I don't think they're separate. I think that's what I was in the past meetings and in the email. That's what I was kind of trying to say, but I couldn't because it was difficult to say because I haven't exposed the process. But I think when we are here in the general, if you see the general overview, the call for projects is the last part. I would say that up until proposal, the process would still hold. And then the call for projects would be the last one. So, well, maybe it would be call for proposals then instead of call for projects. But the idea is, when we are in the process, like here, when we are in this process, the first part, the upper part of the process, so we propose, we get the proposal through, it goes to the working group coordinator, we get the whole thing, and now in the end we have the proposal, which means we have the idea that we're going to work with. That basically means that the ideas, they're going to eventually go through the working groups, or they're going to eventually find their way into the people who are either doing it already or haven't started doing it yet. And that's the moment when we're going to have a proposal. And this proposal might or might not fit into the proposal resource gathering part, which means maybe in the call for proposals, in the call for projects, they can have a theme, like we're calling out projects for social economics, for the social economics part, and that's people are going to start, making pre-proposals, and we're kind of taking those pre-proposals based on how refined they are, and then sending them to the work group coordinators, which are going to talk to people and refine them as well. And that's kind of like a selection process, actually, until we got to we say, okay, we have the socioeconomic working group coordinators and their general coordinator. They have looked up all the proposals. We have open for a 3-week period of people sending proposals, and we're shifting the proposals, and we're working on them, and we finally have these 5 or 10 best proposals that we got to, and then we have to choose which ones to fund.
I mean, this all sounds very similar to what we were doing with the fundraising call for proposals. As in, first of all, we ask for something that's very simple, essentially a pre-proposal. Basically, write down your idea and a rough estimate of what kind of resources you'd need and what are the outputs, and then the proposal itself would be something that we would work with the person who made this pre-proposal in order to get something that's more developed and ultimately more likely to produce the desired outcomes, and has a kind of a quantifiable values for things like the amount of funds that would be needed. So it does seem like the two things are essentially exactly the same.
They do exactly the same thing, but they don't do it through the same way. That's the main difference, I would say. Because, for instance,
difference though in terms of the way that they're done?
I think, for instance, if we are making a call for projects, right, a call for proposals, then people are going to write down their proposal. We're going to send them a template, and they write down the proposal and send it to us, or they fill up the proposal sheet online, and that gets to us. We still need to be able to tell which proposals are good and which proposals are not, and to get the finalists, we need a selection process.
Wait, which one are you describing now? Are you describing the process that you've just talked about for the last half an hour? Are you talking about the wind empowerment fundraising proposal process?
The fundraising.
Because it sounds like you're describing both of them at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Let's say the call for projects that we've been working on. The difference between that and this that I'm proposing here is that in the call for projects, we tell people to send us a rough estimate of how much they want, a description of why they want to do it, and all that, which basically is the same to that extent. But people the proposer is gonna go from. There's no pre-proposal process. They go straight into proposal. That's what I mean. The difference is that
there isn't. I'd say
the proposer would go straight here.
No, because the way that we'd been talking about doing it was that we would ask people for an outline proposal, which is another word for a pre-proposal.
Pre-proposal,
something that is just laying down the basic ideas. It doesn't take a lot of time, but just enables the person that has the idea to share it with the people that facilitate the development of ideas into projects. And then once we've filtered out which ideas we think could possibly make good projects, then we invite them to make a more detailed proposal, which is the same as the proposal stage on here. And then we go and look for the resources that we need in order to do that in terms of volunteers and funds. And a project leader and a project team. Yeah, exactly. So I really think these two are exactly the same thing, and I'm really glad that they're the same thing, because it makes it a lot simpler to just have one system rather than 2 or 3 different systems for people to learn.
True. I would say it's the description that I've showed you kind of showed the different steps and who is supposed to be involved in each step. So at least here, let's say they do the same thing. They look very much the same, and I just telling who's supposed to do what. For instance, the proposal meeting is a moment when we gather people to. We don't ask necessarily the proposer to write down more, but we actually get the proposer and somebody else and the working group coordinator on the table, and they can talk about exchanging information between themselves. For instance, that's just an example. Let's say that the very slight difference is that I'm trying to show through the whole process what happens as is, for instance, at the end, at the proposal phase, we get to file the proposal, and if we can't fund it now, we can fund it later. And that's kind of like, at least it's detailed. I think the process is a little bit more detailed, but yeah, it gets to the
I
same
agree. The one that you've described here is much more detailed. I think when we'd been thinking about in terms of the fundraising proposals, then we'd got some of these ideas in our heads, but we hadn't gone down and put them down on paper in as much detail as you've got here. So I'm really glad that you have gone and described this much more completely than we have, because I think it's the kind of thing that where you leave ambiguity, then people become unsure of what they're supposed to do, and then that's how the process breaks down. So I really like these diagrams that you've got here, and I really think they will help to make the system function in the way that we've designed it to, rather than it becoming this unnecessary bureaucracy which just confuses people and stifles the whole process of translating ideas into workable projects and ultimately solutions.
Yeah, and that's is exactly the process, the way it's described. I think because Pete was based pretty much this process on what goes on inside of Siemens.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of took that experience out to say, well, try to get as little redundancy in the projects, in the proposals as possible, and streamline the process of getting the information to the people who are either doing it or would like to do it.
Yeah, I remember Pete had introduced a system like this back in the early days of wind empowerment, and I think at the time, then Pete was pretty much the only one who understood how it worked. So it meant that other people couldn't really put in proposals. I think the system worked really well for Pete and the people he had direct contact with, but I think he's absolutely gone down the right route by simplifying it so that it then means that more people can be involved in the process, and ultimately it will be simpler both for the people doing the administration of the process as well as the people that have the ideas and want to turn them into projects. And I really like the way that you've presented it here, and I really do think that the diagrams help with that process. So well done for transitioning a complex and bureaucratic system into something that is simpler and hopefully much more effective at doing the task for which it's designed.
Thank you.
Jay, what do you think? Do you have anything to add? Are you still with us, Jay? Jay, your microphone is muted, so if you're speaking now, then we can't hear you. Okay, it might be siesta time for Jay. Well, I did have another question then, if
Sure.
no one else has got anything to say at the moment. With the website, with the WordPress, and then Zoe has already put together a really nice how-to guide for someone who has not used WordPress before, to teach them how to make a simple post so that they too can become creators of windempowerment.org. And I think what you've done here is a really nice how-to guide for how to use the proposal system. I think it may be a bit too much detail for the people that have ideas, but for the people that are administrating the process, then I think it's exactly the right level of detail. Would you be willing to translate this into something even simpler using the diagrams that you've got there for people that have ideas, that we can put onto the wind empowerment site. And when people come to us and say, I've got this brilliant idea, I'm going to design this triple, quadruple mega bladed vertical axis wind turbine for rooftop mounting, how can I get people from wind empowerment to work on this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's why I did the sort of I think that's why I did this, because I wanted to create a form that people can just go through and write down the stuff that they want, what they want to do.
I think the form is a great way of doing it, by the way. I really like that. I just, what I'm suggesting is just adding on a little bit, maybe as a separate page with the diagrams that you've got there, so that people know once they drop their idea into this form, then it doesn't just disappear into the ether. They have an idea of, even just a rough idea of where it's likely to go, what's going to happen to it ultimately.
All right. I think that sounds good, because then we could probably just, basically what you're saying is translating the presentation into a page in wind empowerment.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sure, why not? Because then it's basically taking the images that are here and putting it down with a little bit of text and writing down the different steps.
And one of the other things one of the reasons why we're making the how-to guide for the WordPress site and for the other kind of bits of the organization, like, for example, the decision-making process, is so that when we have new members that join us, then we want them to be able to engage with the wind empowerment community as much as people that have been here for 3 or 4 years. And one of the barriers to them doing that is them not understanding what the processes that we use as an organization are. And one of the processes that I hope will be adopted by the association is exactly this that you've described today, how we translate ideas into projects. So if a new member joins us and they want to know how they get their ideas into projects, then this is exactly the kind of stuff that they will want to see. And one thing that they can do is watch this webinar, but are people necessarily going to watch an hour-long webinar if all they want at the beginning is a short piece of information that tells them quickly and easily roughly what the process is, and at the bottom links to a more detailed explanation, which could be this webinar?
Mm-hmm.
And the other benefit about doing it on windempowerment.org as well is it will be automatically translated. So this webinar is locked into English at the moment, whereas if you put it as a page on WordPress, then quickly and easily, with using the flag button in the top right-hand corner, you can have it in any language, any mainstream language in the world.
True. All right. Okay. No, I'll do it. True. Sounds like a good idea.
So another question then was, I'm about to put up on the Market Assessment Working Group forum this idea about a global market assessment for small wind in the Global South. So this is a research proposal that I've now put together as a 2-page thing, and we've submitted to an organisation here in the UK called Supergen Wind Hub, and we don't think it's going to be very successful because it's mainly focused on offshore wind rather than small-scale wind for developing countries. But if they're interested in trying something different, maybe they'll go for it. But what we want to do is develop this idea a bit further. So basically what we've got at the moment is something that is between this diagram that you've got. Oh, hello? Can you still hear me?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, where did it cut out?
3 seconds ago.
Okay, good. So I think what we've got here is an idea that is perhaps at between the pre-proposal and the proposal stage. So would this be a good kind of test proposal to put through the system?
I think so, yes.
Because I would really like more people to be involved in the project, and I would really like it to be as collaborative as possible. And we do have a meeting on Thursday evening, actually. We've just scheduled it today, which would be this proposal meeting that you've got with the green person meeting the pink person and the 2 red people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think yeah. Well, why not? Let's give it a try.
Are you around on Thursday evening? Would you like to join?
I am around. Yes, definitely.
It'll
I don't know what
be
time. What time?
5 p.m. UK time. So we're at 6 p.m. UK time, so an hour earlier than now, whatever time it is in France.
Okay, yeah, it's 7 o'clock now here. Yeah, so it would be 5 p.m. UK time. I think we
Yeah,
could do it. Yes, yes. Hmm. But then the point is, if we want to do this to test the system by using this, somebody would need to write a pre-proposal, and you could work as or we could send this to Costas, or we could try it ourselves. You could work as a proposal collector. I could work as a proposal collector to see which work group that would go to. What I mean is, would you like to go all the way to the beginning of the process and go
I think
through,
we've
or
already
would you?
started it a little bit. Mainly, I mean, this one, the beginning was kind of obvious where it would go because it's a global market assessment for small wind. So it obviously goes to the market assessment working group. And
Okay.
we have kind of gone through these steps without explicitly stating that we were doing that. So basically, this is an idea that I had at the end of writing my thesis and kind of sat there parked for a year or two. And recently, I've kind of brought it back to life. And so I've got in touch with John Person, who is the current coordinator of the market assessment working group, and asked him what he thought about it. And also asked Aaron, because he's done quite a lot of work in the area as well. Those guys have given me feedback on it. And then we've said, well, why don't we meet as a group to discuss specifically this on
Mm-hmm.
Thursday? And that's what would be the proposal meeting. So without knowing it, we've unwittingly gone through this process naturally, which proves that it's a, a, a kind of viable system, one that is not just some kind of bureaucracy that we've made up, but it reflects how research is or how research projects are put together anyway.
True. But then I don't see why would you need me on Thursday, because in the end, you could get the forms and fill them up yourself, or
That's
well,
true.
what would be the objective of having me around?
The objective of having you around is so that you can see the process of how it's happening anyway and try and see whether the process that you've described here can accelerate or improve what we're doing. I guess you could argue that both me and Aaron have just sat through this meeting, so we now know what you know. So
Yeah,
maybe it's
exactly.
not the point of you being there. I guess it was more out of interest. If you're interested in seeing what we're doing, translating an idea into a project, then
Mhm.
it would be worth you going. But as it wouldn't be as useful as you meeting with someone who has an idea at the beginning and doesn't know how to go through that process.
I think it's more about the point that it's not within my area of expertise. So I would just sit there and I wouldn't be able to participate in the meeting and actually give you guys any viable or interesting input that you could use on the market assessment.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, it would be more like, even if I'm there as an spectator, looking at how you're jungling ideas around, I think you wouldn't necessarily need me to do that. I don't know.
True.
What do you think, Aaron?
Well, Lewis, we're sort of trialing the process, I suppose. So, um, as well as having an area of expertise, you're also a very skilled systems man, application man, and so it wouldn't be necessarily your expertise on the market assessment. It would be the expertise in how this will work as a system, and maybe get some feedback for the sort of system that you've designed or created within with the projects that you just presented to us. Either way, if you weren't able to make it or up for being there, we could always report back to you at the next exec meeting or whatever. So yeah, up to you. One thing I wanted to say, Lewis, was what how to take this forward. because there's already a couple in the Gmail of maybe suggestions of pre-proposals that have come through. There's one guy in Pakistan that wanted to design a multi-global data. There's another guy that wanted to look at DIY wind turbines for osmosis, water filtration and desalination from CAT. And we've just sort of put them in the direction of the experts without any sort of formalized system. But maybe if we've got a system now, we can get back to them and say, hi, have you got anywhere with your project? Should we? We've now got a system for dealing with projects. Do you want to fill out this form and we'll get back to you, sort of thing?
I see. I'm thinking about it. I mean, if they have already sent us something, then maybe I was trying to look out for what they've sent us. Is it in the Wind Empowerment's email?
Yeah, I wouldn't try digging it out now. I can try and find it and forward it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's also for if we get things in the future, how do we move forward with this?
I would say I think it would be very important to do as John said, to do a kind of a step-by-step guide for filling up the ideas. So kind of getting this page that I'm showing you guys right now and put something on before here. You know, so like an explanation of if you have an idea, you can just fill this pre-proposal form and Then after the form, I just put something that says, want to know what happens to your idea afterwards? Click here to get more description on the selection process, and then we'll, so that people can actually just come in and fill in their ideas in the pre-proposal form. Why do I say that? It's because by filling their ideas in the pre-proposal form, and we can, by getting this habit, we're going to have a document, a spreadsheet with all the information that we need. I mean, we're going to have when the people submitted, what's the name, what's the title, who's the person, what's their email, all the background of the project, everything will be described in detail. So it means that we're not going to have all this hassle about sending emails back and forth and who is following this project, who is not following this project, and all that. Even here, I could even add, and that's the good thing about this proposal forms. I can even add in the end, in the next, and the working group coordinators only part. I could add something that says, all right, let me see if I can find this. See if we can just quite quickly going through the spreadsheet. We can get back to a form that's been pre-filled, and go into the working group coordinators part. And in the working group coordinators, I mean, we can just write down more details about the proposal. We could even add a third page saying who's the project manager and when's the project starting and things like that. So we could the form could be something that's universally used by everybody in the community and all the working group coordinators, and we have all the data in one place. So the people who are managing the network, they can see what's going on, who's doing what, and it's easier for people to follow what's going on. I don't know if I answered your question there.
You still there, Aaron?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it's the good thing about, I suppose we're all doing the same thing. The difference in the only, let's say, the advantage of, or the added value of this method is that it formalizes the process. So we have a formal description of where the information comes from, who it goes to, and where it ends. There's all the possible issues, all the possible exits are described, so the person knows that either they're going to get refused, or they're gonna get filed for the moment because we don't have the resources, or we're gonna put the people and the resources together to make their idea into a project.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be clear with people what's going to happen with the ideas that they have, so that they know what's the next step. Basically, that's what I would want to know if I had an idea. Am I just dropping this idea into the ether, never to be seen again, or am I going to? What's the pathway for getting this into something concrete as opposed to just an idea?
Yep.
Cool.
So
Well,
maybe the ideas that we've already received, you can send them to me. I could try to kind of like either talk to the people and ask them to fill this up, or we ourselves we fill this up. I don't know how we could rectify that, like telling people, hey, could you then submit this through our pre-projects form, and
yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Getting those people who have already said that they've got ideas to essentially be guinea pigs in the system. Because as you rightly said before, the idea that I've had with the global market assessment, we've already gone part of the way down that process. So it's maybe not the best one to trial the process on. But with these other ones that are sitting in their inbox at the moment, they are literally at the very first stage. So we could push them through the system and tweak it as they go along.
And see what happens, see what's needed to change in the form, what's the next good thing to do, what's good and what's not good based on.
Exactly. So as an action then, shall I put down Luis to dig out these ideas from the Wind Empowerment Gmail and I guess steer them towards the forms that you've created?
Sure, but is it up to us to rewrite them into the form, or should we ask the people to actually input them into the form?
Ask the people to put them in the form, yeah.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're not testing the form. That's partly what we want to test, isn't it?
Yep, that's true.
So I guess first things to do then would be to make the page with the basic description of what the system is using the diagrams from this presentation, then send out to the people that have suggested ideas to Wind Empowerment a link to that page on windempowerment.org, and from that page also link to the forms and ask them to put their ideas into the forms, and then we direct them to the coordinators of the social and technical working groups, Esteban and Costas, and hopefully direct them towards the relevant working group coordinator, and a project will hopefully develop as a result if all goes well.
Where should I put this in Wind Empowerment? Should I put this under projects, or should I put this under participate?
This should go under research. Yeah.
Right.
This is part of
what
Pete had constructed using this process on the old site, but it was all constructed in pages as opposed to posts, so it didn't really translate very well. So yeah, definitely put it under that tab. It's a bit confusing because what we've got as projects are projects as in kind of pilot or demonstration projects that our members have done, whereas research is research projects as in ideas, finding solutions, that kind of stuff.
Should we change projects to past projects and research, current research, something like that?
It's not necessarily past projects because they can be ongoing, but maybe we do need to think about that wording a little bit.
I'll create a tab under research. I'll create a tab proposing ideas or something like that.
Okay.
Can you write that down as action as well, because I don't forget it? To create a tab on the research for hosting the page with the proposal form.
Okay. Well, if we don't have that much more to discuss, then I might be cheeky and nip out and get this train back to Sheffield. So I think it
Right.
has been a really productive session so far, and we've got a few actions down on paper of how to develop this further. And I really think it has the potential to help give some structure to a part of wind empowerment, which I think has perhaps lacked it in the past. And as we've seen with these ideas that are sitting there in the wind empowerment inbox, waiting to be translated into reality, then I think there's a real need for a more structured process. So with a bit of kind of practice and learning as we're going along, I hope this process can fill that gap.
Me too.
So as an action for me as well, I'll upload this recording onto the webinar section of windempowerment.org. So you were going to say, Luis?
I was going to say, Aaron, could you send the email with the proposals of the people to me, or to the Wind Empowerment, or?
Sure. I'll dig them out. It was just while John was away and I was fulfilling that coordinator role, there was just a few emails that came through that I just got back to, and it might be worth chasing them up anyway, just to see if anything happened over the proposals or their projects, and then whether they still need any help. So, yeah, put that down as an action for me. I'll dig them out.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll also post the minutes up on, where should I post them actually? Because this is on the technology working group forum.
No, we have webinars. If you look at our Google Drive, there is a webinar.
Yeah, no one's going to find it in there though.
Well, yeah. We have meeting minutes, but I don't know. Where should we put this? We could put into the technology working group. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I've got it as a Google document at the moment, so you're right, I should put it in that folder in the Google Drive, but I'll also copy and paste it into the technology working group so that people who aren't using the Drive can find it as well.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, guys. It's been great to chat with you, and thank you, Luis, for making this session happen.
Well, thank you. It was really nice. Really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis. It's always nice to hear your ideas, and hopefully to push things forward, because I think we've had a lot of effort setting up wind empowerment with all the structure and wider picture of it. But the main thing we want to do is get some projects actually done, wind turbines implemented and made better for the people that need them. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's definitely your speciality within wind empowerment, Luis, the ideas man. So with this process, I hope you can help other people to be as successful as translating their brilliant ideas into reality as you have been.
Well, that's all about me. I'm a man of ideas. I do nothing, but I have ideas all the time.
Having ideas is doing something. That's a role within society. Everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, and one of your greatest strengths is definitely coming up with light bulb moments.
After speaking for 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Right, I'm going to have to nip because my train is going to be leaving.
All right. Well, cheers. Then,
Okay,
thank you.
Have
Have a great evening.
Yep.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.